A black single dad missed his crucial job interview to help a stranger, only to discover she was a millionaire CEO who changed everything. The rain came crashing down, wild and relentless like nature's own fury, hammering against the cracked asphalt and echoing like war drums in the storm. Lightning split the heavy gray sky, followed by thunder that shook the empty road. Noah Evans stepped out of his weathered red pickup truck, paint faded with time. His short black hair was soaked through, raindrops tracing down the hardened face of the 36-year-old man. He glanced at the dashboard clock. 8:50 a.m., only 10 minutes left before the life-changing interview at Dalton Tech, the one chance he had been waiting months for. He drew a deep breath, tugging his jacket higher against the icy rain, ready to climb back into the truck. But then his eyes caught movement across the waterlogged road. A sleek black sedan sat tilted in the mud, one wheel buried deep. Its door flung open, and a young woman in a gray coat stumbled out, panic written across her face. Her high heels sank instantly into the thick sludge. "No way!" she cried, frustration and despair tangled in her voice. Her dark, brown hair clung wet to her face, mascara streaking down with the rain. She tugged desperately at her trapped foot, only sinking deeper, her wide eyes darting helplessly. For a split second, Noah's heart wrenched in two. That interview was everything. His last chance to claw free from overdue bills, meager meals, and the unspoken hope shining in his 8-year-old son, Ben's eyes. He had spent weeks preparing, losing sleep, burning every ounce of effort into this shot at stability. And now, fate was ripping it away in a storm. But deep inside, Noah knew who he was. A former Marine, a man who once swore never to abandon anyone in need, no matter the cost. His pulse pounded like a drum under the storm's roar. He looked at his watch again. Every second stretched like a minute. Rain hammered the windshield, urging him to choose. In his mind flashed Ben's expectant smile, and then the stranger's desperate face, trapped in the storm. "Damn it," Noah muttered under the thunder. He knew his choice. Slamming the truck door, he strode toward her. The closer he came, the clearer her fear and fury showed. She turned at the sound, eyes scanning him, a stranger in a worn shirt, faded jeans, and mud-stained boots. "I don't need help," she snapped, trying to sound firm, though her voice trembled. "You'll sprain your ankle if you keep pulling like that," Noah answered calmly, his steady tone cutting through the chaos, an anchor against panic. She struggled again, only sinking deeper. Finally, with no escape, she nodded reluctantly. Noah crouched, his strong, calloused hands gripping her heels and pulling hard until her foot came free of the mud. Without wasting a breath, he jogged back to his truck, pulling an old tow chain from the bed. With practiced efficiency, he hooked it to the sedan's front bumper. "Get inside," he called through the rain. She hesitated, then obeyed. The pickup roared, wheels spinning on the slick road before finally wrenching the sedan free. Mud splattered, tires screeched, but the car rolled back onto solid ground. Noah unhooked the chain and turned away without waiting for thanks. "Wait," the woman's voice rang out. She lowered the window, extending a large bill with a guarded but grateful expression. "At least take this." Noah shook his head, refusing eye contact. "No need, I'm already late for my interview." "Interview?" she asked, startled. "Where?" "Dalton Tech," he said simply before climbing back into his pickup. His heart sank when he saw the time, already far past the hour. As the truck rumbled away through the flooded street, Noah felt both crushed and strangely at peace. He didn't know it yet, but the choice he made in that storm to save a stranger was about to rewrite his entire life. A chapter of struggle was closing, and an unexpected new one, full of challenges, hope, and change, was only just beginning. Noah's old pickup crawled out of the flooded stretch, the rain still pouring down as if to test his patience and resolve. His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. There it was, the sleek black sedan now standing firmly again on the rain-soaked road. Only then did he exhale a long, weary breath. But in that same moment, the bitter truth struck him. The interview at Dalton Tech was gone for good. He wiped his face, feeling the icy water trail down his collar and chest. The months of hope he had built seemed to shatter into pieces. On the passenger seat, his phone lit up, a notification reminding him the interview time had passed 15 minutes ago. "Nice job, Noah," he muttered, a dry laugh slipping out at fate's cruel joke. Suddenly, a soft honk from behind pulled him back. Through the blurred curtain of rain, he saw the woman in the sedan staring at him through the half-lowered window, a bill still in her hand, her face unreadable, cold, questioning. Noah hesitated before lowering his own window. He waited for her to speak first. She only studied him, eyes flickering with something he couldn't quite name. Finally, she broke the silence. "You really don't want the money?" Her voice was sharp, devoid of warmth or gratitude, laced instead with suspicion, even irritation. Noah gave a faint, pained smile, swallowing the sting of disappointment. "I didn't do it for money," he said evenly. "Then why?" she pressed, her eyes narrowing. "Nobody just helps a complete stranger like that. Not in a storm like this." The sudden, almost hostile question startled him, but he quickly steadied himself. Meeting her gaze, he answered clearly, "Not everyone lives only for themselves. Sometimes, you help simply because it's the right thing to do." She froze for a beat, her eyes flickering with something softer. Uncertainty, maybe. But just as quickly she masked it, coldness snapping back into place. She shifted the topic abruptly. "You mentioned Dalton Tech earlier. That was an important interview, wasn't it?" "Yeah," Noah replied curtly, unwilling to dwell on the fresh wound. "But not anymore." Her brows knit as though weighing something, but her face returned to its detached calm. "Knowing how important it was, you still stopped to help me? Hard to believe." The doubt in her tone carried a trace of mockery, as if suggesting he had some hidden motive. Noah felt irritation rise but forced himself to stay calm, his voice steady and clear. "I don't need your trust or gratitude. I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. That's all." Her eyes blinked, then darted away from his steady stare. For a fleeting second, Noah glimpsed something beyond her proud exterior, surprise, maybe embarrassment, even curiosity about the man sitting in the battered truck before her. Without another word, she rolled the window up and the luxury car roared off, vanishing into the storm. Noah watched her disappear, a strange mix of regret and confusion swirling inside him. He sighed, pressed the gas, and drove on. His thoughts circled endlessly, about Ben waiting at home, the looming electric bill, the sneakers his son had wanted for so long that he still couldn't afford. Less than an hour later, Noah stood in the gleaming lobby of Dalton Tech, a fragile thread of hope tugging him forward. But as soon as he gave his name, the receptionist's expression cooled. "Sorry, Mr. Evans, your interview has been canceled. We can't accommodate late arrivals." Noah opened his mouth to explain, but the young woman cut him off. "You may reapply for the next recruitment round." 6 months from now." 6 months? He repeated, disbelief heavy in his voice. 6 months was a lifetime in his current state. "Exactly," she confirmed, eyes silently urging him to leave. Noah nodded stiffly and stepped back into the rain. The chill soaking his shirt was nothing compared to the ice settling in his chest. The walk back to his truck felt endless. Every step weighted with defeat. But he didn't know that. High above, in a corner office, someone was watching. Behind the glass, the woman from the sedan stood silently. Her name, Claire Dalton, CEO of Dalton Tech. Her sharp eyes, once cold, now carried something else, curiosity and a trace of uneasy guilt. She lifted her phone, her voice firm with resolve. "I want the file on a man named Noah Evans, the one who had an interview this morning. Bring it to me immediately." Hanging up, Claire gazed out into the relentless downpour. She knew she was about to make a choice she had never considered before. Risky, unconventional, but entirely worth it. The rain still veiled the city like a cold silver curtain, merciless and unending. Noah stood motionless outside Dalton Tech, his feet feeling as if they were nailed to the soaked pavement. His heart sank lower with every beat, each thud growing heavier, slower. The receptionist's cold words echoed in his mind like a curse. 6 months before you can reapply. Noah lifted his gaze toward the gray sky. The rain poured endlessly, as though intent on drowning the entire world. Chilling drops slipped down his collar, tracing his spine, seeping into his skin, yet none of it compared to the deeper cold that gripped his heart. 6 months, a span that felt infinite in his present reality. He shut his eyes, and the weight of life pressed harder than ever. He thought of Ben, his son's bright face lighting up every time he came home, those wide, innocent eyes always brimming with hope. He had promised him once, "You'll get those new sneakers soon, I promise." Now, that promise felt like nothing more than a bitter lie. Opening his eyes again, Noah's blurred gaze drifted toward the bustling street where strangers hurried by without sparing him a glance. Just a black man, standing still in the storm. His mind wandered back to recent weeks, the stack of overdue bills piling high on the small dining table, the shadow of eviction looming. He recalled Ben's silent gesture, laying down the overdue tuition notice without a word, his eyes carrying both understanding and quiet disappointment. A suffocating helplessness swelled within Noah, making it hard to breathe. As a father, nothing cut deeper than failing to provide the basics for his child. As a man, nothing stung worse than fighting with all he had and still drowning in defeat. For long minutes, he stood frozen under the storm before finally inhaling deeply and forcing himself forward. Each step was heavier than the last. He abandoned the old pickup in Dalton Tech's lot and walked aimlessly into the curtain of rain. His drenched shoes squeaked pitifully, a sound as hollow as his spirit. He wandered past shops, cafes, and towering glass buildings, faceless, indifferent witnesses to his fall. His thoughts spiraled. Tomorrow, next week, 6 months from now. Would anything be left of him by then? Then, without warning, he collided with a man in a gray suit striding in the opposite direction. Noah staggered, muttering an apology. The man shot him a disdainful glance and snapped coldly, "Watch where you're going. The weather's bad enough already." Noah froze, not because of the harsh tone, but because the suit was familiar, a Dalton Tech executive. The irony cut deep. He had stood before the door of opportunity, and with one missed moment, it had been ripped away like leaves in the wind. The image of the woman from the roadside flashed through his mind, her cold stares, her suspicious words. They burned even more bitterly now. Perhaps she had been right. Who would sacrifice their own future just to help a stranger? But Noah knew the truth. Even if time rewound, he would choose the same. Not out of glory or gain, but because he simply couldn't deny who he was. A man taught to do what was right. The more he thought, the more directionless he felt. Rain blurred with tears on his face, though they weren't for himself. They fell for Ben, the boy still waiting at home, believing his father could bring back a better future. His steps finally carried him into a small park tucked off the street. Noah sat heavily on a drenched wooden bench, shoulders trembling with cold and exhaustion. He lowered his gaze to his calloused palms, the scars of his Marine days etched deep, more visible beneath the rain. And there, on the edge of despair, a strange calm stirred within him. Today, he had failed. Tomorrow was uncertain, but he knew one thing. He couldn't give up. Not while Ben was waiting. Not while his son's future still rested on his shoulders. Noah lifted his face to the sky, letting the rain wash away doubt and despair. Whatever harshness life hurled, he would keep moving. What he didn't know was that, in the top office of Dalton Tech, Claire Dalton had been quietly watching his entire walk of despair through the security cameras, and in her sharp eyes the ice had begun to thaw, replaced by something far deeper: empathy. Amid the endless downpour, like a sorrowful symphony without end, Noah sat on the worn park bench, his eyes staring blankly into the distance. He was just about to rise and continue walking when a sleek black SUV rolled up slowly, stopping right at the curb in front of him. Startled, Noah frowned at the luxury vehicle as its tinted window lowered. From inside appeared a familiar face, calm, powerful, and cloaked in mystery. It was the very woman he had pulled from the mud earlier that morning. "Mr. Evans," she spoke, her voice smooth yet firm, carrying easily through the roar of the storm. "We need to talk." Noah froze, stunned by the unexpected encounter. He remained still, his eyes confused, cautious. "I don't think there's anything left for us to say, ma'am," he finally replied, trying to mask the despair on his face. But his voice wavered, betraying him. She smiled faintly, her sharp eyes studying him as if weighing something of immense value. "Trust me. You'll want to hear what I have to say," she pressed, her tone soft but commanding enough to make Noah hesitate. "Get in. I won't take much of your time." He hesitated, suspicion stirring within him. This woman was clearly powerful, wealthy, yet Noah had nothing left to lose but time. With a weary sigh, he opened the door, climbed in, and tried not to soak the SUV's pristine leather seats. The door closed, and immediately he felt the contrast: warmth, soft leather, the faint scent of perfume. A world apart from the cold, wet misery outside. The SUV pulled into traffic, gliding swiftly through the crowded streets. For minutes, she said nothing, letting silence build tension, making Noah more curious. Finally, she broke it. "Perhaps I should introduce myself properly," she said, turning to him, her gaze steady, confident. "I'm Claire Dalton, CEO of Dalton Tech." Noah's heart skipped. He stared at her, searching for some sign she was joking. But she wasn't. The cold, guarded woman from that morning was in fact the CEO of the very company whose opportunity he had just lost. Seeing his bewilderment, Claire continued, her voice composed, layered with quiet authority. "I know exactly who you are, Noah. I know you came to Dalton Tech today for the senior logistics management interview, and I know why you were late." Noah blinked, the pieces falling together. He fought to stay composed, though hope flickered faintly in his tone. "So, you came here because of that?" Claire tilted her head, her sharp eyes softening slightly with something he couldn't decipher. "Partly," she answered, adjusting the collar of her gray designer coat. "But what I truly want to know is this: why would a man, standing before such an important chance, throw it away just to help a stranger like me?" Noah exhaled, his eyes locking onto hers, sincerity burning clear. I didn't think twice, Miss Dalton. Nobody deserves to be left alone in that kind of situation. As for me, well, it's done, and I don't regret it." Claire gave a subtle nod, as though finding the answer to a question she had long pondered. She turned toward the window briefly, her eyes distant, then returned to him with a piercing yet mysterious gaze. "But what if I told you it isn't over? What if I said this morning's meeting wasn't coincidence at all, but destiny?" Her words struck him, sparking both intrigue and caution. His voice grew firmer as he asked, "What are you saying, Miss Dalton?" She smiled, enigmatic, almost alluring, her eyes carrying weight and hidden meaning. "I'm saying you still have a chance, a very special chance, one I've never offered to anyone else. Dalton Tech has a serious problem. My team of experts hasn't solved it, and I believe the only person who can is you." Noah stared at her, stunned, his mind reeling. Questions rushed forward, but Claire cut him off. "Of course, the choice is yours. But first, I need your answer," she said, her gaze drilling into him, firm yet challenging. "Are you willing to take this chance, even knowing the risk it carries?" Noah's heart pounded, his pulse alive with hope sharper than ever. Without hesitation, he answered with conviction, "I'm ready." Claire nodded, a faint smile curving her lips, her voice smooth with authority. "Good, then prepare yourself, Noah, because from this moment on your life will never be the same." The SUV glided smoothly through the rain-slicked streets, neon lights from luxury storefronts bleeding faintly across its tinted windows, casting ghostly streaks inside. Noah sat in silence, his mind still spinning from Claire's words. He glanced at her. The powerful woman seated beside him, her sharp gaze fixed on the world outside, as if weighing something of tremendous gravity. After a tense few minutes, Claire's voice broke the silence, calm yet deliberate. "Do you know why I came to find you myself, instead of sending one of my staff?" Noah hesitated, then answered honestly, "I really don't understand. A company like Dalton Tech isn't short on talent. I'm just another candidate, one who didn't even make it into the interview room." Claire smiled faintly, her eyes piercing as though searching his very thoughts. "Exactly, Noah. You didn't make it into that room because of our recruitment system, a system I've realized is deeply flawed." She drew a steady breath, her tone firm with conviction. "I reviewed your file closely the moment I learned what you did this morning. A former Marine, 2 commendations for courage and service, 3 years running a small business, volunteer work at a community center. Those aren't just professional skills. They show character. The kind of character this company desperately needs." Noah's brows lifted slightly. He hadn't expected her to know his background in such detail. Seeing his surprise, Claire continued, "Yet our hiring team dismissed you, because your resume wasn't polished enough, because your work history didn't match their neat little boxes, even because your appearance didn't fit the corporate mold. I believe we've been overlooking not just you, but countless capable people." Noah gave a small nod, bitterness flickering across his face. He had suspected reasons like these, but hearing them spoken by the company's CEO only made the disappointment sting deeper. Claire paused, studying him closely before leaning in with quiet authority. "But I'm not like them. I don't trust surface-level judgments. I trust what I see in people. And what I see in you is someone I want to give a very different kind of chance." Noah lifted his head, curiosity and faint hope flickering in his eyes. "What kind of chance, Miss Dalton?" Claire tilted toward him, her voice lowering but weighted with power. "I want you to come work at Dalton Tech. Not through the usual process. I'll place you directly in a logistics management role. But first, I need your help solving a crisis my team hasn't been able to handle." Noah blinked, almost disbelieving. "You mean, you'd hire me outright? No interview, no assessments?" Claire's lips curved into a knowing smile, her eyes gleaming with mystery. "Interviews matter, but they're not everything. This morning, you had the most important interview of all. You proved that you'd help a stranger at your own expense. That tells me more than 100 scripted questions ever could." Noah nodded slowly, his heart pounding harder at the weight of her words. But doubt still crept in, and he asked carefully, "I appreciate this chance, but what exactly is the problem you're talking about?" Claire's gaze sharpened, her tone turning steel-hard. "Dalton Tech is facing a severe breakdown in our logistics and supply chain system. It's been dragging on for weeks. My technical teams have failed to resolve it. If this continues, the company risks millions in losses, and far worse, irreparable damage to our reputation with partners and clients." Noah sat quietly, trying to picture the scale of such a crisis. Clearly, this wasn't a small test. Claire pressed on, her voice unwavering. "I won't pretend it's easy, but I believe you can see solutions others can't. You've handled worse in the past, haven't you?" Noah met her gaze, and in her eyes he saw not only confidence but genuine belief in him. "Still," he asked softly, earnestly, "you're certain I'm the right person for this?" Claire answered without hesitation, her tone decisive. "I don't make reckless choices, Noah, and I don't gamble on the wrong people. You're the one I want for this." The SUV eased into the city center, skyscrapers glowing through the misty rain. Noah felt the vast gulf between their worlds, her polished empire of power and his life of struggle and survival. As the vehicle pulled up before Dalton Tech's towering glass entrance, Claire turned to him one last time, her eyes steady. "So, Noah Evans, will you step into this new world with me?" Without the slightest hesitation, Noah nodded firmly, resolve burning in his voice. "I will." The SUV rolled to a slow stop in front of Dalton Tech's grand lobby, the glass skyscraper towering skyward as if defying the storm clouds above. Noah stepped out, the chill of the passing rain still clinging to his breath. Anxiety and anticipation churned inside him. He knew in just moments he would be stepping into a world entirely foreign to him, the world of Claire Dalton, of Dalton Tech, a place he had never imagined entering under such circumstances. Claire strode swiftly into the lobby, her heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. Noah followed quietly behind, acutely aware of the stark contrast between himself and those around him. Dalton Tech employees moved with purpose, their suits pressed, their faces serious. When Claire passed, every head dipped in respect, but when their eyes flicked toward Noah, curiosity and suspicion flashed openly. "Miss Dalton!" A silver-haired man hurried forward, his expression panicked, voice urgent. "The logistics system has completely crashed. We've lost contact with warehouses and carriers across multiple states." Claire stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes sharpening. "Do we have any official report on the cause, Mr. Harris?" The man, Harris, shook his head, clutching a folder with trembling hands. "The tech team is trying to identify it, but so far, nothing. We've lost total control, ma'am. If this isn't resolved today, the losses could hit millions." Claire's brow furrowed, her voice dropping, cold yet commanding. "Summon every department head to the emergency boardroom, now." Then she turned to Noah, her gaze icy but edged with trust. "Follow me, Noah. It's time to prove yourself." Noah stepped into the elevator beside her, his heart pounding faster as the doors slid shut. The air inside felt unnervingly heavy. Claire stood silent, staring at the polished steel doors ahead. Noah felt the weight of responsibility pressing onto his shoulders. Not long ago, he had been wandering aimlessly through the rain, and now he was walking into a life-or-death battle with one of the company's greatest crises. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, chaos hit immediately. Employees darted back and forth, phones ringing non-stop, voices tight with panic. Giant digital screens along the walls flashed with ominous red text, "Critical system error." The atmosphere screamed of crisis. Claire swept into the glass-walled boardroom, where senior executives sat in grim silence, tension etched into every face. As she entered with Noah, heads turned instantly, eyes narrowing at the sight of the stranger beside her. His plain clothes stood out awkwardly against the room's polished corporate sheen. "Ms. Dalton?" A tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes spoke first, his tone sharp with irritation. Noah instantly recognized the hostility. "Who is this?" Claire didn't flinch. She straightened, her voice cutting through the room with authority. "This is Noah Evans. From this moment forward, he will be directly involved in resolving this logistics crisis." The man's brow furrowed deeply. Jason Mitchell, head of the technical division, the one responsible for the current system. His glare was heavy with defiance. "Ms. Dalton, forgive me, but we're in a critical emergency. Is it really wise to hand over our most urgent problem to a complete outsider? He's not even one of our employees." Claire's response was swift, her tone icy. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Jason. I made this decision because I trust Noah's capability completely." Jason's jaw tightened. He sank back into his seat, but his eyes burned with contempt, glaring at Noah like a trespasser who had invaded his territory. Claire turned to Noah, her voice softening slightly but still firm. "This is your moment to prove I wasn't wrong about you." Noah nodded, drawing a deep breath to steady himself. He stepped toward the massive conference table, aware of every eye, curious, skeptical, hostile, trained on him. "Show me everything you have on the system." "Right now," he said calmly, projecting confidence despite the storm raging inside. A young tech specialist hurried forward with a laptop, his hands trembling as he slid it across the table. Noah sat, eyes narrowing in concentration, as lines of complex code and system maps filled the screen. His posture shifted, focused, steady, as though he were back in the field facing a mission that demanded everything. Claire stood silently beside him, her gaze sharp, studying his every move. Around the room, the air thickened with tension. Nobody spoke. But Noah could feel it, all of them waiting for him to fail, especially Jason, whose eyes gleamed with skepticism and challenge. Then, suddenly, Noah lifted his head. His eyes shone with clarity, his voice firm. "I think I've found the problem." Every breath in the room caught. All eyes locked onto him, waiting for the words that could decide whether Dalton Tech would sink or be saved. The air in the boardroom seemed to freeze the instant Noah spoke. Shocked and skeptical eyes turned toward him, none sharper than those of Jason Mitchell, the technical director, whose expression dripped with disdain. Jason leaned back against his chair, arms crossed, lips curling into a mocking smile. "You're saying you've already found the problem?" Jason drawled, his voice heavy with sarcasm, making sure the whole room could hear his scorn. "Our system is managed by a team of top-tier IT engineers, and yet you, an outsider, claim that after less than 5 minutes of looking, you've figured it out?" Noah raised his head, meeting Jason's glare with calm determination, unmoved by the provocation. "Yes, I've seen this before. The problem isn't with the servers. It's the routing database. It's locked up from a conflict in frozen solid. Jason's brow furrowed, a flash of surprise breaking across his face before he masked it with arrogance again. He stepped closer to Noah, pressing his hands against the table, his voice sharp and challenging. "Mr. Evans, with all due respect, who do you think you are to contradict the conclusions of my senior technical team? For your information, I personally oversaw the building of the system, and I assure you, the servers are where the problem lies." A ripple of whispers spread across the room. All eyes darted between Noah and Jason, waiting for the next move. Claire remained silent, her sharp gaze locked on Noah, refusing to intervene, almost as if testing whether he would claim his ground. Noah rose slowly, his voice steady but carrying strength. "I don't doubt your expertise, Mr. Mitchell. But right now, the stakes are too high for ego or pride. If we want to fix this, we need objectivity. Let me check the system data directly, and I'll prove it to you." Jason let out a short, scornful laugh and shook his head. Turning deliberately away from Noah, he addressed Claire with a sneer. "Ms. Dalton, I've been here over a decade without ever letting this company face a disaster like this. And now, you would really risk letting an outsider meddle with our systems and create even more damage." Claire's response was cold and razor-sharp. "I think you're misunderstanding, Jason. I didn't bring Mr. Evans here to ask your permission. I trust his ability and I want him on this problem immediately." Jason's jaw clenched, his face darkening. After a long, tense pause, he shrugged stiffly, retreating a step. His eyes, however, burned with venom as they locked onto Noah. "Fine. If he thinks he's good enough to solve this, I'd love to see the miracle happen." The tension in the room spiked. Noah sat back down, fingers flying over the keyboard as lines of dense code filled the screen. His focus was absolute, the skeptical stares and murmurs fading into nothing as he threw himself into the system like a soldier on the battlefield. Minutes dragged by, the only sound the relentless clatter of keys. Jason leaned against the corner, feigning composure, but his expression betrayed unease. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Had he overlooked something? Then suddenly, Noah straightened, his eyes alight with certainty. "Exactly as I suspected. The routing database has duplicate address entries. It's frozen the entire logistics system, preventing any new data streams from being recognized." Jason snapped back, his voice noticeably less assured. "Impossible. We checked thoroughly. There was no sign of that error." Noah calmly opened a large data window on the main display, highlighting a string of blinking red characters, clear evidence of a serious conflict. "Here, Mr. Mitchell. This is what you missed. It's buried at the database management layer. You wouldn't catch it by only checking the servers. It's common but dangerous if it's not resolved properly from the start." The room fell utterly silent. Every pair of eyes locked on the screen, the evidence undeniable. Jason's face drained of color, his jaw tightening in humiliation and rage. He had no argument left. Claire stepped forward, her voice cutting through the heavy silence with authority. "Noah, can you fix it now?" Without hesitation, Noah nodded firmly. "Give me 30 minutes. I can clear the error and restore full system operations." Claire turned to the room, her tone decisive, commanding. "Everyone, follow Mr. Evans's lead. I want our entire logistics system back online within the hour." The team scrambled into action, obeying her immediately. In the corner, Jason retreated further into the shadows, his glare locked on Noah, furious, humiliated, and for the first time, afraid. He had just lost the trust of the most powerful woman in the company. Noah, unaware of the storm brewing in Jason's heart, pressed on with absolute focus. He didn't know it yet, but the silent war between him and Jason Mitchell had only just begun. The room fell into a tense silence the moment Noah's confident words landed. Jason Mitchell lingered in the corner, his face still locked in skepticism, though deep inside a different emotion was beginning to take root. Unease, even fear, as his position and reputation were now clearly at risk. Noah wasted no time. Sitting down before the main display, his fingers flew across the keyboard like a pianist performing a flawless symphony. His eyes locked on the cascading streams of complex code, reading the cryptic language as though it was written for him alone. Step by step, he explained, his calm, logical voice cutting through the suffocating air and pulling everyone into focus. The problem lies in the routing partition table itself. When too many requests hit the same address simultaneously, the database's safety protocol triggered, locking everything down to prevent a system-wide conflict. But that safeguard inadvertently severed all connections between our distribution hubs. Jason, despite himself, edged closer, curiosity flickering across his face. For the first time, his arrogance faltered as he realized he may have missed something critical in his earlier assessment. "Why didn't our system detect this?" a young technician asked, breaking the silence with nervous sincerity. Without pausing his rapid keystrokes, Noah answered clearly, "Because you relied too heavily on automated diagnostic software. That tool wasn't designed to flag this specific type of conflict, so it didn't appear in the standard reports. I know this because I've fixed similar problems before, on smaller scales." Jason felt a lump forming in his throat, but he couldn't summon a single rebuttal. Every word Noah spoke was precise, logical, each one striking directly at the pride he had built his career upon. Noah pressed forward with increasing speed, launching into deep system queries, stripping away the lock commands suffocating the database. His movements were sharp, decisive, his focus absolute. "I'm going to restart the database now. Once it comes back online, all connections should restore almost immediately," he announced, glancing briefly at the tense faces around the table. Claire remained beside him, silently observing every detail, but her gaze had shifted. The stern watchfulness of before had softened into something else. Respect. She knew then she had chosen correctly. Noah hit enter. A black console screen popped up, the words "Rebooting System" flashing across it. The room collectively held its breath. Seconds dragged out like hours, the tick of the digital wall clock pounding louder than thunder. 30 seconds later, the main display lit up, showing logistics nodes nationwide steadily returning to normal function. The crimson error codes vanished, replaced by the reassuring green of stable operations. The room erupted. Cheers, relieved laughter, and even embraces filled the once frozen air. Noah let out a long breath, the crushing weight of the past hour finally lifting. Claire stepped forward at last, her eyes warm, her lips curving into a rare, genuine smile. "Well done, Noah. You just saved us from a major disaster." "It was just luck," Jason muttered bitterly from the corner, desperate to downplay Noah's achievement. But his voice carried none of the confidence it once did. Claire turned sharply, her tone icy, cutting through the noise. "No, Jason, this wasn't luck. This was competence. If we had kept following your false assessments, Dalton Tech would already be losing millions." Jason's face paled. He said nothing further, retreating stiffly from the room, his humiliation weighing heavy on him. Meanwhile, employees surged toward Noah, shaking his hand, their faces alight with newfound respect. "Mr. Evans, that was incredible. I've never seen a complex failure resolved so quickly." Noah only smiled humbly, responding with quiet gratitude. No arrogance, no gloating, just steady calm, and that humility only deepened the respect of those around him. Claire stood back, watching it all. Relief washed over her, not just because the crisis had been averted, but because she knew she had found someone worthy, someone who could help her reshape the company's very foundation. But what Claire didn't yet realize was that Jason Mitchell, his pride shattered, his authority undercut, would not accept defeat so easily. Out in the hallway shadows, he clenched his fists, his eyes burning with hatred and the promise of revenge. As the applause and congratulations in the boardroom finally faded, Noah caught sight of Jason Mitchell's figure slipping quietly through the glass doors. Though the immediate crisis had been resolved, Noah felt it in his gut. A darker storm was brewing inside Dalton Tech. All afternoon he kept working alongside the staff, diligently helping them stabilize the system as though the earlier clash had never happened. Yet Jason's burning, resentful stare lingered in his mind, a reminder that this wasn't over. Later that evening, as exhaustion weighed on him, Noah stepped out to grab some coffee. Near the shared kitchen, he froze at the sound of hushed voices. Jason's voice carried deliberately loud enough for others to overhear. "I'm telling you, that guy Evans isn't special at all. He just got lucky. We were already close to the solution, and he happened to stumble into it. There won't be a second time. Mark my words." A hesitant voice answered, uncertain. "But he did explain everything in detail, Jason. It didn't sound like luck to me." Jason cut in sharply, his tone biting. "You're too naive, Steve. Some outsider who's never worked in this company, never touched this system, fixes it faster than our own IT team? Don't be fooled by his humble act." Noah stood still, listening in silence. He drew a long, steady breath before stepping through the doorway. Jason fell abruptly silent, his face flashing with surprise at Noah's sudden entrance. "Oh, Evans," Jason said quickly, forcing a smile. "We were just talking about you." Noah's gaze locked on him, calm but unflinching. "I heard. If you really believe it was just luck, Mr. Mitchell, I'd be glad to sit down and walk you step by step through exactly how I found and fixed the issue." Jason stiffened, his composure faltering before arrogance slid back into place. "No need, Evans. I don't need you teaching me about the system I built." The tension radiated into the hallway, drawing the attention of nearby staff who watched silently. Then, the sharp sound of footsteps echoed, and Claire appeared. Her eyes cut straight to Jason, cold and commanding. "I think we need to settle this right now. Jason, Noah, into the boardroom, both of you." Jason shot Noah a look of irritation but didn't dare refuse Claire's order. The three of them entered, and as the door shut, the atmosphere tightened like a drawn bowstring. Claire stood tall, her voice stern and uncompromising. "I want this dispute addressed directly. Jason, why are you so opposed to Noah?" Jason inhaled, forcing composure. "I only want to protect the company from depending on an outsider whose abilities haven't been fully proven. Evans fixing today's crisis so quickly was unusual. I'm questioning whether it was real skill or just luck." Claire turned to Noah, her eyes softening slightly. "Noah, what do you say to that?" Noah met Jason's gaze steadily, his tone clear, firm yet respectful. "I understand your doubt, Jason, but what I did today wasn't luck. If you paid close attention, you'd have seen I followed a structured diagnostic method, step by step, logically. The reason I found the problem so quickly wasn't chance. It was the result of years of real experience, in the military and later running my own business. I'm more than willing to walk through every step so everyone can see it for themselves." Jason's face flushed, his composure cracking. He searched for a counter-argument but came up empty. But why didn't I, or my entire IT team, spot that error first, while you did? Noah's reply was steady, his expression sincere. Because you've become too familiar with the system. You rely too much on automated routines, which miss subtle but critical faults. I looked at it with fresh eyes, objectively, and that allowed me to see what the internal team overlooked. Claire's voice cut in, decisive and final. I think the matter's clear. Jason, you need to accept that sometimes it takes an outsider to spot what insiders miss. We cannot let pride jeopardize Dalton Tech. Jason lowered his head, silent for a long moment before muttering reluctantly, I understand, Ms. Dalton. Claire's tone softened, though her resolve held firm. Good. From now on, I expect both of you to work together for the company's good, not against each other. Jason gave a stiff nod and left the room, his face dark with resentment. Noah remained, looking at Claire with quiet gratitude. Thank you for trusting me. Claire offered him a rare, gentle smile. You've earned that trust, Noah, and I believe you'll keep proving it. Out in the hallway, Jason clenched his fists, his eyes burning with hatred as he glared at the closed boardroom doors. He vowed silently, this battle was far from over. The moment the boardroom door closed behind Jason, the atmosphere lightened noticeably. Noah stood still, his eyes lingering on Jason's furious silhouette fading through the glass. He knew Claire's decision hadn't been easy, yet the firmness and clarity with which she had handled the situation made him respect the powerful CEO on a deeper level. Claire turned to him, her expression soft, the earlier severity gone. Noah, I need you to understand, my decision wasn't made lightly, but Jason crossed the line and I cannot allow his negativity to poison this company. Noah gave a small nod, his voice steady and sincere. I understand, Miss Dalton, and I'm truly sorry things had to come to this. Claire's smile was gentle, her gaze unwavering. You have nothing to apologize for, Noah. The one who owes an apology isn't you. I've watched carefully and I know you deserve the trust I've placed in you. She paused, her tone sharpening with resolve. I'll be announcing Jason Mitchell's dismissal as technical director today, not for personal reasons, but for the long-term good of Dalton Tech. Noah blinked at her decisiveness, surprised yet relieved. The conflict was being cut off at the root. He realized sometimes hard choices were the only way forward. When Claire stepped out and made her announcement to the senior staff, the office fell into brief silence. Then a wave of applause erupted, loud and unified. The executives weren't just endorsing Claire's judgment, they were showing their full support for Noah, the newcomer who had exceeded every expectation. I think this was necessary, a veteran employee declared, his tone brimming with respect for Noah. Mr. Evans didn't just resolve the crisis brilliantly, he exposed serious flaws in how we've been working. He's earned our trust. Voices quickly joined in. That's right. Evans solved in hours what Jason couldn't fix for weeks. We trust him, Miss Dalton. Please, give him a permanent position. Claire glanced toward Noah, nodding slowly. Her voice rang out, clear and authoritative. I agree. Effective immediately, I appoint Noah Evans as Dalton Tech's Director of Logistics Operations. With his ability, experience, and integrity, I believe this is the right choice for our future. The room erupted once more with cheers and applause. Staff hurried forward to shake Noah's hand, their faces glowing with admiration and respect. Those who had once looked at him with doubt now greeted him with warmth and confidence. Congratulations, Noah. You truly deserve this. We're glad you're joining Dalton Tech. Looking forward to working with you, Director Evans." Emotion swelled in Noah's chest. For the first time in years, he felt valued, truly seen. Smiling humbly, he thanked each colleague sincerely. "I'm deeply grateful for your trust. I'll do everything I can not to let you down." As he stood among his new team, Claire stepped beside him, her tone gentle yet firm. "Noah, remember this. My decision wasn't about pleasing you or anyone else. I made it because of the real ability you've proven. I believe you'll take Dalton Tech's logistics to new heights." Noah turned to her, eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "I won't disappoint you, Miss Dalton. That's my promise." Claire gave a slight satisfied nod, her sharp gaze softened by trust. "I believe you, Noah." While Dalton Tech embraced its renewed hope and unity, in a far corner, Jason Mitchell silently packed his belongings. His face twisted with bitterness as he glanced back at Noah, surrounded by applause and respect. Something Jason himself had never truly received in all his years at the company. Clutching his bag tightly, Jason walked out of Dalton Tech, his heart burning with resentment. He swore this would not be the last time he faced Noah Evans. Today, he had lost, but one day, he promised himself, he would even the score. Back inside, Noah stood tall among his new colleagues, fully welcomed into the Dalton Tech family. For the first time in a long while, he felt he truly belonged, his talent and worth finally recognized and honored. As the celebration wound down and employees returned to their work, Noah quietly slipped away from the crowd. A strange mix of happiness and disbelief still lingered in him. He stopped at the wide office window, gazing out at the skyline as the skyscrapers lit up against a fading sunset. He never imagined that in just a single day, his entire life could change so drastically. A familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "How are you feeling, Noah? Overwhelmed by everything that's happened?" He turned to see Claire walking toward him with a coffee in hand. The usual sharp, commanding edge to her face had softened into something gentler, almost tender. Noah gave a small smile and answered honestly. "A little, Miss Dalton, but mostly I'm grateful for everything you've done for me today." She handed him the cup and motioned toward the chairs by the window. Sitting opposite him, her eyes thoughtful as she stared out over the city, she spoke quietly. "Noah, there's something you should know. You might be wondering why I placed such a big bet on someone I'd only just met." Noah nodded slightly, waiting. Claire was silent for a long moment, as if weighing her words carefully. Finally, she turned to him, her eyes carrying a depth of sorrow he hadn't seen before. "Because I saw in you something I once had myself, the resilience to face prejudice and injustice." Noah blinked, startled. He had never expected the powerful CEO before him to admit something so personal. Claire sighed softly, her gaze turning distant as she recalled her past. "You probably won't believe it, but I wasn't born into wealth or power. I grew up in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Chicago. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep me in school. My father died when I was very young, and I learned early how to survive among judgment and discrimination." Her voice trembled slightly, though her eyes stayed firm. "I'll never forget my first day in a major company. The looks I got, doubt, bias, condescension. They thought a young woman from a poor background could never amount to anything. I had to work 10 times harder than everyone else just to prove I belonged." Noah listened intently, sympathy and surprise clear in his expression. For the first time, he realized her journey mirrored his more than he had imagined. "How did you get through all of that, Miss Dalton?" he asked softly. Claire's lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes gentling as they met his. I decided I wouldn't let anyone else dictate my life. I worked tirelessly, step by step, until I reached where I am now. But the most important lesson I learned is that along the way, I needed people who saw me for my abilities and character, not my background, not my appearance, not the prejudice I faced. She paused, then looked straight into his eyes, her voice sincere. And that's why you caught my attention from the start. When you refused my money, I saw in you a rare quality, someone who places integrity and kindness above personal gain, even at great cost. Noah's heart stirred, warmed by her honesty. He spoke quietly but firmly. I'm truly grateful that you saw me that way. Honestly, I never thought someone like you could understand what I've been through. Claire nodded gently. I believe our past struggles shape who we truly are. You reminded me of something I almost forgot. Resilience and kindness will always be the keys to overcoming society's prejudice. A strange closeness welled between them. Though worlds apart in status, they were bound by shared scars and strength. It erased the distance that had once seemed impossible. Claire's voice softened, carrying a note of hope. Noah, I don't want you to see me only as a leader here. I hope we can be true friends, friends who genuinely understand and support each other. Noah smiled, for the first time completely at ease with the powerful woman before him. I'd like that, Claire. Truly, I feel lucky to have met you. They exchanged a long, silent look. Words weren't needed. The trust and empathy in their eyes spoke more loudly than anything. An invisible bond had been formed. Outside, twilight faded into night, but for Noah and Claire, it felt as if a new dawn was breaking, one built on trust, understanding, and the promise that together they could face whatever trials lay ahead. That evening, for the first time in what felt like forever, Noah returned to his small apartment with a light heart full of hope. Claire Dalton's heartfelt words still echoed in his mind, like a warm light cutting through the darkest corners of his soul. His steps carried new strength and confidence. He was a man who had rediscovered his worth after years of battling adversity. He paused at his front door, drawing a deep breath to savor the quiet peace of the moment. As he pushed the door open, the familiar creak made Ben look up from the little wooden table. The boy's wide eyes sparkled with surprise and joy. "Dad, you're home!" Ben cried, leaping up and throwing his arms around Noah, his innocent face brimming with excitement and curiosity. Noah bent down, holding his son tightly, warmth and love flooding through him. "Yes, I'm home, son. And today I've got some wonderful news for you." Ben's eyes grew even wider, his young voice trembling with anticipation. "What is it, Dad? Tell me." Smiling, Noah ruffled his son's hair and sat him down at the small dining table, pulling a chair close. Looking directly into Ben's eager eyes, he spoke with pride. "Today, I got a new job, son. A very good one, at Dalton Tech. From now on, things will be so much better. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." Ben blinked, silent for a moment as if to be sure he'd heard right. Then his face lit up with unrestrained joy. "Really, Dad, you got the job?" Noah nodded firmly, happiness ringing in his voice. "Yes, son, I did it. And tomorrow I'm taking you to buy the new sneakers you've been wishing for. It'll be the first gift from my new job." Ben squealed with delight, hugging Noah again, tears of happiness welling in his eyes. Noah's chest tightened with emotion. He knew their lives had just turned a corner. The next morning, Noah and Ben walked hand in hand into the city's biggest shopping mall, a place they had once only passed by, never daring to step inside. This time, pride and joy filled Noah's heart as he guided his son into the largest shoe store. "Pick any pair you like, Ben," Noah said gently, his eyes full of love. The boy stood before the shelves, gazing in wonder at the rows of gleaming sneakers. At last, he picked up a pair of blue ones, the same pair he had once longed for from behind the glass. "Dad, can I have these?" Noah grinned, his voice firm. "Of course, son. You deserve them more than anyone." From there, they continued shopping. Clothes for Ben, a brand new backpack for school, and even a small red bicycle, the dream Ben had whispered about every time they walked past the toy store. Later, resting together on a park bench, Ben looked up at his father with shining eyes. "Dad, today is the happiest day of my life." Noah met his son's gaze, his own voice trembling with emotion. "Mine too, Ben. Your happiness is the greatest gift I've ever had." They sat side by side in the soft morning sun, cherishing a joy so simple yet so priceless. Noah squeezed his son's tiny hand, thinking that every hardship he had endured was worth it, because now he could give Ben the better life he deserved. And in that warmth, Noah realized something profound. Kindness, perseverance, and faith in himself truly could change destiny. He had faced despair and doubt, but his choices, rooted in goodness and love, had led them here. Across the street, hidden in the shadows, Jason Mitchell stood watching. His eyes burned with malice, jealousy twisting inside him like fire. He swore he would not let Noah enjoy this happiness for long. A new storm was brewing, but Noah, blissfully unaware, felt only the peace and joy of sharing this perfect moment with his son. The first light of dawn slowly broke along the horizon, streaming gently through the clouds that lingered after the night's rain. It spilled across the wide glass windows of the new office Noah had officially taken over. Sitting quietly at his polished desk, he looked out at the waking city below, a deep sense of peace filling his heart, something he hadn't truly felt in years. His mind drifted back to that fateful day, when he had stood in the freezing rain, faced with the hardest choice of his life: walk past a stranger to make it to his interview, or stop to help, knowing full well it might cost him his one chance at a better future. Back then, he could never have known that what seemed like the riskiest, most foolish choice would become the turning point that transformed his and his son's life completely. The image of Claire Dalton came into his thoughts, the powerful woman he had chosen to help. He still remembered her initial coldness, her sharp pride. But what resonated more deeply was the warmth in her eyes when she finally shared her past with him. It was empathy and kindness that had woven an invisible thread, binding two strangers into true allies. Looking around his spacious new office, a symbol of trust and recognition from Claire and the entire Dalton tech, Noah realized how far he had come. Those who had once doubted him now stood at his side. He knew now that sincerity and compassion carried a power greater than prejudice, strong enough to win over even the harshest skeptics. He rose and stepped to the window, resting his hand on the cool glass as traffic below began to stir. He understood that everyone out there, like him, was struggling daily to be seen, to be valued for their true worth. Resilience and self-belief were the keys to surviving life's hardest trials. Closing his eyes, he thought of his son, Ben, of the boy's radiant smile when he finally received gifts that had once been only dreams. Noah's pride swelled. He hadn't lost himself to hardship. He hadn't abandoned kindness even in his darkest moments. A soft knock pulled him back. Opening his eyes, he turned to see Claire at the door, 2 steaming cups of coffee in her hands. Her smile held no trace of the old ice, only honesty, trust, and understanding. "Good morning, Noah. You're here early." Noah smiled, stepping forward to take the cup. His voice was warm, genuine. "I was just taking a moment to enjoy this peace, this hope. It's been so long since I've felt it, and it's all thanks to you, Claire." But she shook her head gently, her gaze steady. "No, Noah. Everything you have today, you earned it yourself. It was your kindness, your perseverance, your faith in who you are that made this possible. I was simply fortunate enough to recognize it." Her words lit a fire inside him. Together, they stood by the window, watching the city awaken beneath the golden sun, sharing a silence filled with peace and promise. Elsewhere in the city, Jason Mitchell sat in a darkened room, his bitter eyes fixed on Dalton Tech's gleaming tower reflecting the sunrise. At last, he understood schemes, envy, and spite could never triumph over true kindness and integrity. The injustice he once tried to create had come full circle, leaving him isolated and broken. He knew now that the path he had chosen would never bring him success or real happiness. Back in his bright office, Noah watched the sun finally break fully through the clouds, flooding the city with radiant light. It felt like a symbol of new beginnings, of hope meant for everyone. He realized that life was far fairer than he had once believed, so long as he never abandoned his faith in himself and in the goodness of the human heart. He vowed silently that no matter what came, he would hold on to resilience, faith, and kindness. As long as those values lived in him, life would always open new doors. And as the dawn spread across the city, Noah smiled with quiet confidence, ready for the future, believing deeply that compassion, courage, and equal opportunity belonged to everyone, no matter their skin color or their past. Dear friends, Noah and Claire's story reminds us that kindness, perseverance, and belief in ourselves can overcome even the hardest trials. But what about you? If faced with the choice between chasing your own chance at success or stopping to help a stranger, what would you decide? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video. Share it with friends and family to spread its positive message, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring stories to come. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.